What happens if you're getting more senior but less confident? That's what we're here to explore in the podcast today. Welcome to episode 102 of the Confident at Work podcast. I'm your host and confidence coach, Anna Manning. So last week, I was at a book launch for a book called New Methods for Women. And when she'd finished her talk, there was a panel discussion. A woman in the audience stuck up her hand and said, I'm really, really struggling. And she described how she'd really quickly come through the ranks in her organization. She'd done really well by any standard measure of success, but she was having a problem and she wanted to know what she could do about it because she'd noticed that the more senior she was getting, the less confident she felt. She described being a lot more confident, more self assured, more ready to take things on earlier in her career. And then she described how, as she'd risen through the ranks and got more and more promotions and more senior, she'd become less and less confident. And it got me thinking, it's not the first time I've heard this. Plenty of people have told me this story. They're now more senior, but they feel less confident. In this episode, we're going to explore what's happening when you're becoming more senior but feeling less confident. What can make it worse? Why it might be happening, and what you can do about it. So first of all, we're going to look at what might be happening. And if this is you, and you're getting more senior, but you feel like you're actually getting less confident, you may be in a position where you feel like you've got to hide and fake. So we think, and maybe you think, that more senior people, they have it all together, don't they? They know what they're doing. They don't experience as many doubts. They have an answer for everything. Now you're in that senior position. You know that you don't always know all the answers. You do have doubts. And you don't always know how and what you want to do. I think when you're more senior, it can feel worse not to be particularly good or particularly strong at something. So let's take being a confident public speaker. You might think that that's okay if you're in a very junior position. But if you're in a very senior position, you may have assumed that by this point, you should really be good at everything, even though that's kind of impossible for one person. Maybe you have the idea you should know everything. And if you're not, potentially, it's going to damage people's trust in you. It's going to damage your reputation, which is a lot of pressure. And of course, when you're more senior, you've got more people looking up to you. You've got more people relying on you. The more senior you get, the more of that buck stops with you. So, of course, there's more pressure. There's more responsibility. And when you're acutely aware of that, it could lead you to feeling less confident. Sometimes we assume that being more senior or more experienced means that we don't really have to learn or grow or develop because we're there, right? We've reached the heights. And I think that can get us into a bit of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset says, I have what I have right now. I probably can't really grow or develop. I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. That's just the way it is. And I see that sometimes earlier on in careers, people have more of a growth mindset. They know that they've got a lot to learn. They know that they've got areas where they want to develop, and they think that's okay. But sometimes when people get more senior, they're like, well, I should already be there. I should already have developed everything. And of course, that is not true. But it does make us feel worse when we get into a more senior position and we realize, of course, we've still got stuff to learn. So what can make this worse? So you're getting more senior, but less confident. And you tell yourself, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't right. This goes against everything that I thought would happen. I thought people got more confident the more senior they got. But I'm going in the opposite direction. So you tell yourself it shouldn't be happening. You make it a problem. And then on top of it, you judge yourself for it. Oh, this shouldn't be happening. And of course, that makes the whole situation worse because that means that you have to hide, you have to fake, you have to pretend. And that makes everything harder. And it certainly is tricky for confidence. The second thing that I think can make all this worse is that you've got enough to manage without this exhausting you on top of it. You have responsibility, you have targets that you have to meet, you have teams that you have to manage, you've got direction that you need to set, you've got people you need to be accountable to. And on top of all of that, if that wasn't hard enough, you now have to manage this thing which is going on inside, which is that you're feeling less confident. And because of that, you might be overworking, you might be over preparing, you might be overdoing things. You've got enough to manage without all this exhausting you on the top of it, but it is exhausting. And number 3 of what can make all this worse is you think you have to hide it. And this stuff thrives in silence. So you feel alone with it. You think you have to hide it. It's exhausting. And you tell yourself it shouldn't be happening and judge yourself for it. All of that can make this worse. So what are the issues I see occurring around this? And I tried to thinking back to the clients that I've worked with who are getting more senior but feeling less confident. What are the kinds of things that they tell me? And I came up with a few. One of them is worries about speaking up in certain situations. So maybe that's with people more senior, maybe it's with a very particular person. It could be the CEO or the board, whoever. You might have worries about speaking up in certain situations. You might start having doubts about your performance, even if technically you know the work you're doing is good. You may start to have those little doubts creeping in around the edges. You may notice concerns about what other people are thinking about you and your value and your work. Now, they may be thinking that, they may not. But that might not stop you being concerned about it. So even if your performance is nowhere in their mind, you might project that onto someone else and think, they're worrying about my performance. They're thinking that I'm not adding enough value. The other thing I see is insecurities about specific things which you may find a challenge. So I mentioned a couple of examples earlier, whether that is the public speaking example. So there's this very specific thing that I find more challenging. And because I'm more senior, I think that I should be really good at it by now, or that's just an expectation. And so I develop more of an insecurity about the specific thing that I just find a bit harder. The other issue I see is dealing with certain people. So there may be a particular person who a lot of this gets put on, whether that is a boss, the finance manager, whoever. There may be certain insecurities or difficulties or worries that you have when you're interacting or dealing with a particular person. The other issue that I see around this can be to do with conflict and challenge. And the more senior you get, the more likelihood that you have people to lead, you have people to manage, and there are more difficult conversations probably to be had. There's the potential for conflict because you may have to have performance conversations with people. All of that more difficult people stuff, which can include conflict and challenge, may happen more the more senior that you get. And if you're feeling less confident as you get more senior, those issues about conflict and challenge can become more pronounced. The other area I see is around decision making. So when you're more senior, you're probably called to make decisions that have a bigger impact on the organization, the direction of travel, the team that you're working with, right? Your decisions probably at this level carry more weight. And if you're feeling less confident, making those decisions can feel harder. The last issue that I see occurring around this is leading your way. So staying true to who you are and how you want to lead and how you want to approach things. As you get more senior, you may think, well, there's a certain mold that I have to fit. I'm more senior and senior people behave like this. And to be one of them, or to be good at being one of them, I should also behave like this, but I don't because that's just not me. That can come with difficulty and challenge for people in their mind. Let's say you would consider yourself an empathetic leader. You might think, well, I've got to abandon that the more senior I get because that's just not going to work. I've got to be more cutthroat. I've got to care less. And that might lead to an internal tension for you and a difficulty because you're trying to be something you're not, or you're just thinking that you should be something that you're not. So I want to move on and help you think about why this might be happening before we get on to what you can do about it. And there's many reasons why this might be happening. So I'm going to ask you to notice what resonates with you. You may be in an environment where confidence is hard to maintain. So if you think about the kind of environment where confidence would thrive, it's in a supportive, encouraging environment with realistic standards where you get fair feedback, you get acknowledged for things you do. You may not be in that kind of environment. You may be in a very cutthroat environment where you're doubted, criticized, set completely unattainable goals, and you never really get any feedback. That may be your life as a more senior person. And if it is, confidence may be harder to maintain in that environment. So think about when you were more junior. You may have had a supportive boss around, you may have had a supportive team, and all of those are helping you to grow, develop. But they're giving you good feedback, they're supporting you along the way. If you're working in an environment where you think confidence is hard to maintain, that might be the reason why you're getting more senior, but you seem to be feeling less confident. Another reason why this might be happening is you've got less control over things now than you did before. So think about when you were more junior. Probably all that mattered was that you did the work and you did it well. But once you're more senior, you have to give away a lot of that control. There will be other people doing work for you. Maybe you're not doing any of the work and other people are going to be delivering. You've got less control over how that work is done. And even though you might say, well, I trust my teams and they get things done, you still have less control. And that can feel for some people quite anxiety provoking and worrying. So if you like a lot of control, but you can't really have it because you're more senior now, does that present a difficulty for you? Does that start the kind of little panicking or the alarm bells that could be undermining your confidence? The other reason that this might be happening is that maybe confidence has actually always been a bit of a problem for you, but now you're more senior and you've got a higher level of responsibility, you have more exposure. This problem is just showing itself up more clearly. Another reason why it might be happening is you've somehow, could be many reasons why, but you've somehow slipped into a low confidence cycle and we need to get you out of it. So by a low confidence cycle, I mean a set of habits, patterns, and behaviors that you might unknowingly have adopted at work. And when you adopt those habits, you feel less confident, like self-criticism, self-doubt, unrealistic standards, never giving yourself fair feedback. So you might have slipped into a low confidence cycle, even without noticing. And that might be why you're getting more senior, but less confident. Now, if you're a woman, you may also, depending on your age, be experiencing hormonal changes. In perimenopause, some people experience changes which impact their mental and emotional health and impact their confidence at work. The other reason why this could be happening is something has happened over the course of your career which has caused your confidence to kind of fail or dip. It might be that you failed at something. It might be that you made a mistake. And that thing could have caused a bit of a crisis of confidence for you and you've never quite regained it. Now, obviously, if you're more senior, it stands to reason you've probably been in the workplace a longer period of time. And that means that it's more likely that something is going to have gone wrong. Something is going to have happened which wasn't ideal, whether that was a failure, mistake, some kind of setback. And that can lead you down a path where your confidence dips and decreases, and maybe you haven't been able to get it back. So that's why this more senior but less confident might be happening. But now let's have a think about what you can do about it. And there's some nuance to be observed here, right? Because what you could do about it depends on why you think it's happening. But I've got some general rules here that are going to help you. So the first thing that I would recommend is that you see whether it's possible for you to release any judgment you're having about the fact that this is happening. And the reason that I recommend doing that is because the judgment just adds a layer on top of an already difficult situation. So imagine I'm thinking, okay, I'm more senior, but I'm less confident. And that makes me an idiot. And this definitely shouldn't be happening. I'm already feeling less confident. And on top of that, somebody, okay, it's me, but somebody is judging me for the fact that that's happening. And what I see is that can keep people stuck in that situation. It can keep people hiding. It can keep people inside thinking that the problem is with them and this shouldn't be happening and I can't tell anyone. Okay, you might not like the fact that it's happening. It might not be ideal that you're now more senior and less confident, but it's happening. So can you just say, it's happening? All right, I accept it. I'm more senior, and you know what? I'm less confident. And that's just the situation as it is today. The next thing I recommend that you try and do is recognize why your confidence might have dipped. I think it's useful to do a little bit of detective work on this and say, okay, let me try and investigate what's actually going on here so I can recognize why my confidence might have dipped. So think back to the time where you felt a lot more confident. It's useful to write this down if you can. What did you think about yourself in that time when you felt more confident? What did you think about the value that you brought? What did you think about the work that you did? So investigate. And that moment where I was more confident, what was I thinking about myself and my work and my value and what I bring? And what am I thinking about myself and my work and my value and what I bring right now? You might even write that down on 2 sides of a piece of paper, and I'm guessing you're going to notice that some of those thoughts and beliefs are different. So I'm recommending that you investigate that for yourself. The next thing that you can do about it is recognize how your habits might be hindering your confidence. So I mentioned that you might have slipped into a low confidence cycle. And if you have, you can get out of it. But the first step to getting out of it is recognizing the habits that are keeping you in it. Those bad habits are things like criticizing ourselves, having a lot of unmanaged self-doubt, not providing ourselves with any emotional support, giving ourselves a hard time if we make a mistake, telling ourselves we should be perfect constantly when that's impossible, noticing all the stuff that goes wrong but never really acknowledging the stuff that goes right, ignoring our progress and instead just focusing on the gaps. All of those things are habits, and all of those things create an internal environment that you're working within. And that might be a very difficult environment for confidence to grow and be maintained within. So if you haven't yet taken it, click into the show notes and go and take our free confidence assessment. What that's going to tell you is whether or not there are habits that you can change, which, if you do, will help your confidence to grow and be maintained. The next thing that I recommend you do about it is see if you can adjust your expectations. So your expectations may have been that the more senior you get, the more confident that you get. Well, is it time to revisit that expectation? Your expectation may have been that once you're senior, You should know everything. You should not have any development left. You should be a beacon of confidence and knowledge. But was that expectation really realistic? When you think of the people who are above you, do you really think that they felt so great all the time? Well, I coached them and I can tell you that they don't. So it may be time to adjust your expectations of how this period of your career is supposed to feel. Because maybe that is a little bit out of whack. The next thing that I recommend that you do is be honest with some other people who are at your level of seniority and see whether this really is just you, or whether they sometimes have doubts and insecurities and worries and feel less confident in some areas than they would like to. I'm guessing that if people tell you the truth, you're going to find out that they don't always feel as great as they might be showing you. For most of us, we kind of hide behind this very nice professional persona. Yes, I'm confident all the time and I'm always bright and breezy and I always know what I'm doing. But at 3 a.m. when I wake up, do I feel like that? Not all the time, no. Sometimes I'm a bundle of worries and doubts. Normal part of being a human, but it often isn't a normal part of what we share. So if you can form a network of other people that are at your level of seniority where you can speak honestly and openly, it's going to normalize this for you and it's probably going to help you to feel better. Maybe if that's even only one person, and if it feels safer, maybe it could be one person in a completely different industry, in a completely different organization to you. The next thing I recommend is to get a coach. Seriously. Now, I know I'm a coach, so I have a vested interest in saying this, but seriously, if you're getting more senior and less confident, get a coach. And ask your work to pay for it. You're more senior, you're worth a lot to them, your development is worth a lot to them. So many organizations send people to me for coaching who need a bit of support with their confidence at a particular point for whatever reason. You may feel confident discussing this with your boss or with a HR person, but you may not. If you don't, you can come direct, but seriously consider whether some professional help could get you back on track. It is possible. You do not have to feel terrible and exhausted because of doubt and worry and anxiety at work, especially if technically you're doing a good job and you don't have any complaints. This is an added layer of difficulty which you just do not need. If you want to coach with me, you're very welcome to click the link in the show notes, book a call, and you can explore with me for free whether or not I can help you. I'll tell you honestly whether I can or whether I can't. All right. They are my ideas for what you can do about it. So if you're getting more senior and less confident, you're not alone. It's happened to many people before you. It's happening to many people right now. There is something that you can do about it. You don't have to struggle on like that forever. And if you're not more senior, but you're thinking, oh, I had all these ideas about how everyone who was more senior than me was always feeling confident. I hope this episode has shown you that that is not always the case. All right. I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.